I used to believe in perfection, not in the abstract, quiet way people say they do, but in the raw, unshakable certainty that my life had settled into a shape I could finally trust. Every morning felt like a soft exhale of comfort. Every night, a pause of quiet satisfaction. I had Sarah. I had plans. A ring I'd picked myself. A future we sketched in laughter and whispered promises. I trusted her with everything I had, not just my heart, but my entire sense of who I was and the life I thought we were building together. Adnan was there too. My friend. My brother not by blood, but by choice. He was the one I could call in the dead of night, knowing he'd answer, knowing he'd show up. We shared secrets, dreams, and the kind of loyalty that feels like it could withstand anything. With Sarah and Adnan, I thought I had the world figured out. I thought I had the people who mattered most aligned perfectly around me. And then, one ordinary night, everything shattered. I walked into the cafe like any other day. I didn't expect anything to feel different. The smell of coffee, the chatter of strangers, the clink of cups, mundane, comfortable, safe. But there they were. Sarah, Adnan, laughing together, their hands intertwined in a way I thought belonged only to the stories I'd written in my mind, only in my imagination. I froze. My chest tightened until it felt like my ribs might collapse. My stomach turned over, and every instinct I had screamed to run, to fight, to scream, to demand answers. But nothing came out. I just stood there, watching them, alive, existing, together. And in that moment, I realized something so brutal it stole my breath. The people I trusted most, the people I believed would never hurt me, were the ones who broke me. Not with violence, not with words, not with a fight, but with something far more devastating. They broke me by living the life I thought was mine, by choosing each other over me, by rewriting our world while I was still standing there, blind to the betrayal. I don't remember leaving the cafe. I remember the steps, the numbness in my legs, the way the world blurred into a slow-motion slide of betrayal. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I didn't cry, at least not in public. My heart broke quietly, privately, in a way that no one could see, no one could touch, no one could fix. My mind tried to make sense of it. I told myself maybe I was imagining it. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe, just maybe, it was a cruel joke. But the truth sat there, heavy and undeniable. My perfect world, the one I had spent years building in trust and love, had cracked in a single night. And yet, walking away, I realized something even deeper. I realized that the pain wasn't just about them. It was about me too, about the illusions I had built around safety, around loyalty, around love. I realized that the foundation I trusted so blindly wasn't strong. It was fragile. And when it crumbled, it forced me to look at myself in a way I had never dared, to see the cracks in my own judgment, to face the vulnerability I had hidden behind smiles and plans. The silence followed me out of that cafe. It followed me like a shadow I couldn't shake. And in that silence, a strange, bitter clarity emerged. My world had fallen apart, but the pieces were mine to face, mine to understand, mine to rebuild. There was no denying the betrayal, no pretending it didn't hurt, no turning back the clock. But in the wreckage, I glimpsed a truth I hadn't known. Trust can be shattered, loyalty can fail, love can deceive, but the self that survives the collapse becomes something else entirely. Stronger, sharper, awake in a way that comfort never taught you to be. I didn't know it then, not fully. That night I was numb, hollow, lost in the echo of laughter that didn't belong to me anymore. But even as the heartbreak burned through me, even as I felt like the ground had been ripped from under my feet, a spark flickered deep inside. A quiet, stubborn refusal to let this break define me. A faint, defiant thought that whispered I could survive this. I would survive this. And so I walked away, not with vengeance, not with shouting, not with bitterness in my hands. I walked away with the slow, shattering understanding that the people you love the most can hurt you the deepest, but your own strength, your own clarity, and your own future are yours to claim. My world cracked that night, yes. But the pieces, as painful as they were to gather, were the first fragments of a life I would one day rebuild, on my own terms, with my own eyes open, with my heart cautious but unbroken. I learned something in that silence. I learned that the ones you trust most are the ones who can betray you most profoundly, but also that the self that endures that betrayal becomes untouchable in a way nothing else can teach. And as I stepped into the night, leaving them behind, I realized my world had cracked, yes, but I was still here, and that mattered more than anything. I disappeared, not in a dramatic way, not with shouting or doors slamming, but quietly, like a shadow slipping from the world I once believed in. I stopped answering calls, stopped responding to messages, stopped pretending that the world outside mattered. I became invisible to the people who cared, the people who wanted to help, the people who had always been there. I didn't want help. I didn't want comfort. I didn't even want to breathe in the same air as anyone else. Ayan tried. My younger brother, the one who still looked at me with that innocent trust, the one who thought he could save me from myself. He came to my room, sat outside my door, left notes, tried to coax words out of me. But I pushed him away every time. Not because I didn't love him, I loved him more than anything, but because I couldn't let anyone see me this broken. Because every time I thought about Sarah, every memory I replayed in my head, every smile, every laugh, every plan we had made, it felt like a knife twisting inside me. I blamed myself. I blamed my own blindness. How had I not seen it? How had I trusted so completely? How had I allowed my life to be rewritten behind my back? The nights were the worst. Days were tolerable in their dull, shallow way, but nights became my enemy. Darkness pressed down on me like a living thing, filling the corners of my room, creeping into my mind. I could hear every echo of laughter, every whisper of a promise I thought was safe. I replayed moments over and over, her smile at breakfast, the way she reached for my hand, the plans we whispered in the dark. And each time, I felt the weight of failure crushing me. Not just the failure of trust, but the failure of myself. I had been blind. I had been naive. I had been weak. Mrs. Fatima noticed, of course. She always notices. She had raised me like her own son, seen the pieces of me before I even knew they existed, and I resented her for it. I resented that she could see the cracks, the raw edges I wanted to hide. One evening, she sat across from me in silence, the kind of silence that isn't empty but full of patience. And then she spoke. Not softly, not gently. She said something that lodged itself in my chest, sharp and undeniable. Pain can break you or build you. I stared at her, wanting to hate the words, wanting to throw them back at her, because I was not ready for them. I was not ready to hear the possibility that this hollow, ragged pain could ever lead to anything but ruin. But her eyes didn't plead. They didn't demand. They were steady, unflinching. And for a moment, I realized she wasn't talking to me. She was talking to something inside me, the part of me that I had forgotten existed. I didn't feel built. I didn't feel strong. I felt weak. Weak in a way that sank into my bones, that made my chest hollow and my limbs heavy. I felt angry. Angry at Sarah, at Adnan, at the world that seemed to have no rules for betrayal or fairness. Angry at myself for believing in things that didn't exist. Angry at Ayan for trying, because I couldn't bear to see anyone care when I felt like this. And I was lost. Not lost in a physical place, but lost inside myself. The world had collapsed, and I was wandering the ruins, searching for something familiar that wasn't there. I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't know how to feel. I didn't know if I would ever feel anything again that wasn't pain or anger or numbness. I tried to drown it. I tried to erase the memories, to push the thoughts under layers of distraction, of noise, of anything that could keep me from thinking about the life I had lost. But silence found me every time. The silence of my room, the silence of my heart, the silence of nights spent staring at the ceiling, questioning every choice I had ever made. The silence was suffocating, and I welcomed it, even though it hurt, even though it reminded me of everything I had lost. In those long, endless nights, I understood something I had refused to face before. Grief doesn't move in a straight line. It doesn't come and go. It sits with you. It shapes you, molds you, carves out space inside you where the person you were can no longer fit. And that space, raw and aching, is where the first fragments of whatever comes next begin. But I didn't know that then. I only knew the emptiness. I only knew the betrayal. I only knew the sting of every smile she had given me that was now hers for someone else. I wanted to scream. I wanted to vanish completely. I wanted the world to stop noticing me. But then, sometimes, Ayan's voice would break through the fog. A question, a knock, a simple, "Are you okay?" And I hated it. And I hated him for it. Because he reminded me that life kept moving, that people kept caring, that the world didn't stop for anyone's heartbreak. And I wasn't ready to care about anything, not even myself. Mrs. Fatima's words haunted me long after. Pain can break you or build you. I didn't feel built. I felt fractured, hollow, and drowning in the silence I had chosen. But the words stayed, a stubborn ember in the darkest part of me, refusing to die. And even as I clung to my anger, even as I pushed away the people who loved me, even as I replayed the life I lost over and over in the dark, that ember waited. It waited for the moment when I would stop running, when I would stop hiding, when I would look at myself in the mirror and not see just the brokenness, but the possibility of something else. Not yet, not tonight, not tomorrow, but one day. And for now, I'll let myself sit in the quiet, let myself feel the weight of everything I'd lost. Let myself be angry. Let myself be weak. Let myself drown in the silence. Because before you can rise, you must first sink completely. And I just begun to sink. I reached a point where the weight of everything became unbearable. Not just the betrayal, not just the silence, not just the nights that felt like endless tunnels, but the way I had let it define me. I had two choices and I knew it. I could stay here, hollow, a ghost trapped in my own grief, letting anger and pain dictate every breath I took. Or I could stand up, feel the fire that was still smoldering somewhere deep inside me, and decide that this was not the life I would live. For a long time, I didn't think I had the strength. I thought the cracks in my heart were permanent, that the people who had used me, the people I trusted most, had stolen everything worth holding. But one morning, I looked at my reflection in the mirror, and I didn't recognize the person staring back. The eyes were hollow, yes, but there was also a spark there. A spark that whispered, "Maybe you're not finished yet. Maybe you can take the pieces and make something stronger." I chose to fight. Not to fight them, not with anger, not with violence, but to fight for myself. To rebuild what they had tried to destroy from the inside out. I started working harder than I ever had. I stopped begging for attention, stopped pleading for love, stopped hoping anyone would see my worth. I began building it myself, brick by brick, decision by decision. Every hour spent improving myself. Every task I completed, every small victory became a declaration. I refused to lose again. Hamza came into my life at just the right moment. A man who had no connection to the betrayal, no personal stake, but somehow understood it better than anyone. He didn't pity me. He didn't sugarcoat anything. He helped me see the truth behind Sarah and Adnan's smiles, behind the warmth that had once felt safe. They hadn't just hurt me emotionally, they had used me. My trust, my love, my devotion had been a tool for their own selfish satisfaction. And suddenly, clarity hit me like a storm. I hadn't just been betrayed, I had been exploited. That realization didn't make the pain go away. It didn't erase the nights I'd spent drowning in silence, the moments when I felt unworthy, small, broken. But it did something far more dangerous. It ignited fire. Fire in my chest, fire in my mind, fire in every action I took. I realized revenge didn't have to be violent. Revenge didn't need shouting or confrontation or even acknowledgement from them. The only revenge I needed was my own life rebuilt. Success, strength, self-respect, the things they could never take from me, no matter how hard they tried. I sought guidance from Mr. Qasim, a man whose wisdom wasn't loud but precise. He didn't tell me to forgive. He didn't tell me to let go. He told me to focus on what could not be taken, my own choices, my own actions, my own future. And slowly, I began to see it. Every setback I had suffered, every tear I had cried, every sleepless night I had endured became fuel. Fuel for growth, fuel for ambition, fuel for the life I was determined to build. I started planning. Not planning attacks, not planning confrontation, but planning a life so undeniably mine that it would be impossible for anyone to ignore it. I invested in myself. I learned new skills, took new risks, surrounded myself with people who respected me, who added to my growth rather than taking from it. Every achievement became a quiet but powerful answer to the betrayal I had endured. I didn't need them to feel small or guilty. My success would speak for itself. The transformation wasn't instant. It wasn't a sudden lightning strike that made me whole. It was slow, painstaking, sometimes painful. There were mornings when I woke up exhausted from the effort of caring for myself, of protecting my mind from falling back into old patterns. There were moments when the shadow of betrayal loomed over me, and the memory of their laughter cut deep. But each time, I reminded myself, this is your life, not theirs, not the ones who used you, not the ones who took from you, not the ones who thought you would stay small. This is your life, and you will decide its shape. Hamza stayed by my side, not to carry me, but to push me, to challenge me, to make sure I faced the truth every step of the way. And slowly, I felt something shift. The anger didn't disappear, it became discipline. The pain didn't vanish, it became focus. The heartbreak didn't fade, it became wisdom. And the hollowness I once felt turned into something I hadn't expected. Power. Quiet, steady, undeniable power. The kind that comes not from hurting others, but from refusing to let anyone hurt you again. I began to recognize the new me. Not a victim, not someone defined by what was taken from me, but someone who had faced the worst, looked it in the eyes, and decided to rise. To rise with purpose, with clarity, with fire. To rise not because I wanted to prove anything to them, but because I refused to be small, weak, or invisible again. And as I stand now, in the early hours before the world stirs, I understand something I didn't before. Betrayal doesn't just break you. If you let it, it can also awaken you, force you to choose who you will become. And I chose. I chose fire over ashes, action over despair, self-respect over longing, life over the shadow of loss. Sarah and Adnan will continue their lives, unaware of the storm they left behind. But I have learned the most important truth. My life is mine, not theirs, not dictated by their choices, their lies, or their betrayal. Mine. And the choice to rise, to build, to claim what is rightfully mine, this choice changes everything. This choice shapes the person I am becoming. Not a broken soul, but a force. Not someone who waits for love, but someone who earns it. Not someone who loses, but someone who refuses to lose again. And in that refusal, I discovered something neither pain nor betrayal could touch: freedom. I had stopped waiting for revenge, stopped obsessing over the people who had broken me, stopped replaying every betrayal in my mind, stopped letting their shadows shape my days. I thought about them less, almost like I had exiled them from my heart. And that's when life quietly, effortlessly did what I could not. Sarah came back, not with apologies I could accept, not with love, not with the soft smiles that used to make my chest light up. She came back with regret, hesitation in her steps, doubt in her eyes, a weight she thought I would feel. But I didn't feel anything like what I expected. No heartbreak, no anger, no sudden surge of longing. I just felt calm. It's strange, the way clarity hits you after so much pain. For so long, I imagined confronting her, showing her the depth of my hurt, demanding she feel even a fraction of what I had carried. But now, standing before her, I realized something profound. I didn't need to destroy her. I didn't need to make her feel small, or wrong, or lost. Time had done it all for me. Time had stripped away the illusion, the trust, the control she once held over me. And all I had to do was keep standing. Adnan's fall was even quieter, yet harsher. His job, once a badge of pride, slipped from his hands. The respect he had curated, carefully built like a fragile glass, shattered in front of everyone who had admired him. The image he had sold to the world, smooth, confident, untouchable, crumbled, leaving only the hollow man beneath. I didn't laugh. I didn't celebrate. I didn't even gloat. I felt nothing but a strange, heavy calm. Watching karma unfold without my interference was liberating. I realized the most potent revenge is never in our hands. It is in the inevitability of truth and consequence. During this time, I met Nita. She appeared in the most unremarkable way. A stranger with no expectations, no history with me, no judgment waiting at the door. She didn't ask questions that dug into old wounds. She didn't lecture or try to fix me. She listened. That alone was revolutionary. I could speak without fear of pity, without the weight of obligation, without the pressure of performance. Her presence reminded me that I was still human, still capable of connection, still worthy of peace. There was a rhythm to the days I spent with her. Not dramatic, not life-altering in some flashy way, but real. Conversations over coffee that didn't need to lead anywhere. Quiet walks where silence wasn't suffocating but comfortable. Moments that slowly taught me how to inhabit my own skin again, how to breathe without remembering every cut from the past. With Nita, I discovered that healing isn't always spectacular. It can be a gentle, steady reclaiming of self. I thought about Zara during these moments too. She had been a small, persistent reminder of the life I had once taken for granted. The laughter, the closeness, the unspoken bonds that anchored me to a world I had once felt safe in. Seeing her now, noticing how life continued beyond my own pain, I understood something I hadn't before. People move on. Life moves on. The world doesn't stop for grief, for heartbreak, for betrayal. And the sooner you stop holding on to the anger, the sooner you see how immense and unending the present can be. Sarah, Adnan, even the nights that had once swallowed me whole, they were no longer weapons against me. They were markers of lessons learned, proof that I could survive, proof that I could rise without being consumed. The calm I felt was different from numbness. It wasn't emptiness. It was power disguised as peace. The kind of power that comes not from punishing others, but from mastering yourself, from refusing to carry bitterness, from understanding that some battles are already won if you survive them with integrity. I stopped thinking about what they had taken. I stopped imagining scenarios of confrontation or proving superiority. I started thinking about what I could build. Slowly, imperceptibly, the future stretched out in front of me, not as a blank slate, but as a place I could inhabit fully, without fear, without hesitation, without the burden of old pain. Time had taught me the ultimate truth. You don't need to hurt anyone to be victorious. You don't need to seek revenge to reclaim your dignity. You don't need to wait for apologies or recognition to know your worth. Sometimes the world delivers justice quietly, elegantly, without you even lifting a finger. And sometimes the only thing you need to do is survive long enough to see it happen, and then let it go. Nita reminded me that peace isn't a destination. It's a practice, a conscious decision to live fully despite the scars, to laugh despite the echoes of betrayal, to trust slowly, selectively, but without fear of being hollow again. She didn't change me. I changed me, and she merely reflected back the fact that I was still capable of it, still capable of being human, still capable of love that isn't tied to pain, still capable of existing in a world where calm could finally replace chaos. And in that calm, I saw it clearly for the first time. Life doesn't always need your vengeance, your wrath, or your anger. Sometimes, life itself is the instrument. It reshapes what is broken, punishes the undeserving, elevates the persistent, and gifts the patient with clarity. I didn't need to intervene. I didn't need to manipulate. I didn't need to prove anything. I only needed to continue existing fully and unapologetically, and let time do the rest. The chapters of betrayal, pain, and silence had led me here. I had walked through the fire alone, had drowned in my own despair, had rebuilt myself with nothing but stubbornness and grit. And now, in the quiet aftermath, I could see the reward, not in wealth, not in victory over others, not in recognition, but in something far rarer, the understanding that I am untouchable in ways no betrayal can compromise. Sarah's regret, Adnan's ruin, the nights I once feared, they were no longer my enemies. They were proof. Proof that survival, self-respect, and integrity matter more than any fleeting hurt inflicted by others. And as I stand in this calm, watching the remnants of what once threatened to break me fall into place on their own, I understand that peace is not the absence of pain. It is the mastery of it. And for the first time, truly, I feel free. I don't forgive Sarah for her sake. I forgive her for mine. That distinction took me years to understand, but I feel it now, deep in my chest. Forgiveness is not about letting someone else off the hook. It's about releasing yourself from the chains of anger, of pain, of all the ways their choices once held power over your life. And I realized that holding on to hatred only kept me tethered to the person I had been, helpless, vulnerable, and defined by their betrayal. I don't forget the nights I cried, the silent dinners I endured, the way my chest ached with the memory of their laughter and the life I thought was mine. I don't pretend those wounds never existed. I carry them, yes, but differently now. Not like a burden that bends me in half, not like an anchor dragging me into the past, but like a map of survival, a record of every step I took through pain and came out stronger. Each scar is a landmark, each memory a testament to endurance. They remind me where I've been, but they no longer dictate where I'm going. Adnan's betrayal, Sarah's choices, they don't define me. They were chapters in my story, not the story itself. I have learned that people can leave, betray, and disappoint, and yet life continues. And so do you. I don't smile at their ruin. I don't celebrate the downfall that time delivered. I simply acknowledge it, accept it, and let it pass. I have nothing left to prove to them, nothing left to demand, nothing left to reclaim from the past. I am not smaller, not weaker, not less human. I am more. Ayan, my brother, stayed with me through every storm I refused to face. He did not push. He did not scold. He simply waited quietly, patiently, and when I was ready, he offered his hand. He reminded me that love is not always explosive. Sometimes it is steady, unwavering, and forgiving. He showed me that connection does not require perfection, only presence. And through him, I began to see that the world still contains people who can care without condition, people whose loyalty cannot be shattered, people who can remind you that you are worth more than the pain you've endured. I have found strength I didn't know existed. Not the kind of strength that shows itself in confrontation or in revenge, but the quiet, unshakable strength that arises from understanding yourself fully. I know my value. I know my boundaries. I know that I am not diminished by the choices of others, nor am I defined by the heartbreak I once carried. I am calm because I have faced the worst and survived. I am wiser because I have seen the truth. Some people will never honor your love, and that is not your failure. It is their inability. The truth is simple, yet so difficult to embrace. Losing someone who never valued you is not a loss. It is freedom. Freedom from expectation, from pretense, from the weight of trying to make others see your worth. Freedom to live fully, to invest in yourself, to grow without apology. Losing them is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of one you write entirely on your own terms. I have learned to stand alone without fear, to walk forward without needing validation, to love without attachment to outcome. I have learned to laugh freely, to work diligently, to live intentionally. And in that living, I discovered something that betrayal could not steal. The sense of self that remains untouchable, unbroken, and undeniably mine. I speak to you now, not as someone who has healed completely. Healing is a journey, not a destination, but as someone who has reclaimed themselves. If you have ever been used, deceived, or abandoned, I want you to hear this. You are not less because of their choices. You are not incomplete because they could not value you. You are whole, even when they leave. You are strong, even when the world seems to conspire against you. And you are free, even when your heart aches. I have learned to honor my past without letting it hold me. I have learned to carry my pain with grace, not as a weapon, not as a punishment, but as a reminder of survival. I have learned to trust myself again, to make decisions rooted in respect and love for the person I am, rather than fear of losing someone else's approval. Sarah and Adnan will remain in my past, their shadows shrinking with each passing day. But I am no longer tethered to their actions, their lies, or their betrayals. Ayan reminds me that love can be steady. Nita reminds me that connection can be gentle. And I remind myself every day that I am enough, that I am worthy, that I am complete. I lost them, but in that loss, I found something infinitely more valuable: myself, my strength, my clarity, my resilience, my ability to live fully without needing permission or apology. I found peace in a world that once felt unbearable. I found freedom in a heart that once ached for validation. I found hope in the certainty that my life belongs to me and me alone. So, if you're listening to this, if you have ever felt the sting of betrayal, the ache of abandonment, or the weight of someone's indifference, hear me clearly. Losing someone who never valued you is not a tragedy. It is liberation. It is the opportunity to rebuild your life with intention, to love yourself first, to walk through the world unshaken. It is the moment when you realize that you're not defined by what was taken from you, but by how you rise after it. I have risen. I am rising, and I will continue to rise. Every scar, every memory, every shadow of the past only illuminates the path forward. I have lost them, yes, but I have found myself. And in finding myself, I have discovered a life no betrayal could ever take away.